Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the preview event for Lorwyn Eclipsed. Today we're checking out Blue-White Merfolk, which is mostly made up of new cards, although there are some older Merfolk sprinkled in, and as any good Merfolk deck, we'll need a Lord to pump up our creatures, and this time around it's the Deepchannel Duelist, 2 mana, 2/2, giving other Merfolk +1/+1, and at the beginning of our end step we get to untap target Merfolk we control. So the white splash for these Merfolk has a bit of a tap and untap theme, so the Duelist allows us to untap a creature end of turn, which can maybe allow us to set up a Convoke spell, such as the Disruptor of Currents, 5 mana for a 3/3 with Flash and Convoke, so we can tap or untap creatures to help pay for it, and when it enters we get to return up to one other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, so a very flexible removal spell in certain situations, and being able to potentially flash it in after having untapped an extra creature can also make the difference. The deck is very good at going wide, as we're playing the full set of Silvergill Mentor, which as an additional cost we have to behold the Merfolk or pay 2 mana, that's not going to be an issue, and then enters alongside a 1/1 Merfolk token. So that's how we can start building up our board. And then we also get to use Deeproot Pilgrimage from Ixalan, an enchantment saying whenever one or more non-token Merfolk we control become tapped, we get to make one of those 1/1 blue Merfolk creature tokens. This one also has hexproof, which can also matter at times. So the Pilgrimage is very good with all these creatures that can of course keep attacking to enable it, but if there's a bit of a board stall, we can also count on the new Wonderbrine Trapper, which is a 2/1, so that's already decent stats for 1 mana, and we can pay 1 mana, tap it alongside another untapped creature we control to now tap target creature an opponent controls. So the Trapper is very good alongside the Pilgrimage, especially if we can use it alongside another untapped Merfolk that's not a token, because now we're essentially tapping 2 of our Merfolk, and they count as 2 separate instances for Deeproot Pilgrimage, which is maybe a bit different from, let's say, you're attacking with multiple non-token Merfolk, then you only get 1 Merfolk token out of the Pilgrimage at once, but with a Trapper you can actually generate 2 1/1 tokens, so that's a huge difference. And then especially with a Duelist now maybe helping us untap the Trapper, we might be able to activate it multiple times in one turn cycle, just generating a whole army of Merfolk tokens, which we can then also pump up with a Duelist, or with a Deepway Navigator, a 2/2 that has Flash. When it enters we get to untap each other Merfolk we control, so once again plays into the whole Convoke and tap theme of the deck. And as long as we've attacked with 3 or more Merfolk this turn, they also get 1 additional power, so that can also help boost up the team to help close out the game. And then we've got a bunch more interaction with the Floodpits Drowner, of course, a Merfolk with Vigilance. Vigilance can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. An advantage, of course, with Convoke and with a Trapper, since we can attack with a Drowner, still tap it to tap an opposing creature down. Sometimes it's also a disadvantage if you just have Drowner and a Pilgrimage and you want to attack to enable it, but because of Vigilance now your creature's not getting tapped. Then we also have 2 copies of Sig Wonderwine Wisdom, which is a 2/2 that cannot be blocked, so that's already pretty decent. And when it enters or transforms into the Wonderwine Wisdom, we can target one of our creatures, and if it hits the opponent this turn, we also get to draw a card. And if we transform it into the Wonderbrine Shield, then a creature of our choice gains protection from each color until our next turn. So we can even play defense with it if needed, but of course protection from each color also makes it pseudo-unblockable, so we can potentially set up 2 unblockable attackers to help close out the game if there's a bit of a board stall happening. And then if we keep switching back and forth, we can also draw additional cards with the unblockable front side of Sig, as it can also target itself, of course. And speaking of drawing cards, we have 3 copies of the Mindspring Merfolk from Aetherdrift, a 1/1, but it can exhaust for X and double blue, much like the Mindspring that it's named after. Tap it and then draw X cards and put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk creature we control, so that can also help enhance the team. And by exhausting it, we're also tapping it, so that can also enable the Deeproot Pilgrimage. We'll even get the Merfolk token before getting all the +1 counters. And then rounding out the deck, we have 2 copies of Sig's Command, which is one of these Kindred sorceries that's also a Merfolk, so we could also behold it with a Silvergill Mentor, for instance. And then we want to choose 2 of these 4 modes. Often want to go for the first one, where we get to make a token that's a copy of target merfolk we control. Of course, have to be careful that the opponent cannot remove it in response, but getting to copy one of our lords or some of our more expensive merfolk can be very impactful. Then we can also choose to give our creatures a lifelink until end of turn, can always draw a card, and can also tap target creature and put a stun counter on it if we need some interaction instead. And tapping opposing creatures and stunning them also synergizes very well with Charade from Eldraine, a 4-mana 2/3. When it enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. And whenever we tap 1 or more untapped creatures or opponents control, we get to draw a card. This only triggers once each turn, so Charade enables her own ability, assuming we get to tap an opposing creature down. And there's a bunch more ways to tap opposing creatures, of course, with a Trapper, so that can also draw us additional cards. Same with a Floodpit Drowner, or potentially the mode on Six command. And we've got 2 more with Champions of the Shoal, another merfolk that needs to behold a merfolk as an additional cost to cast it this time, and we also have to exile that merfolk, so that's a bit different from the Silvergill Mentor, but we do get a very powerful creature in return, a 4/6, saying when this creature enters or becomes tapped, we get to tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. So can enable this, of course, by simply attacking, but tapping it alongside a Trapper can also put multiple stun counters on opposing creatures, so that's also pretty neat. And when it leaves the battlefield, we do get our exiled card back. And then the mana base has access to Cavern of Souls to make our merfolk uncounterable. Got a few dual lands, including Hallowed Fountain, which is finally back in standard. The Eclipsed Realms, also good for casting our merfolk spells, including our Kindred Sorcery, so that's also useful. And then our few utility lands include the Air Temple, which can maybe put a +1 counter on all our creatures. Pretty good when we're going wide with a bunch of merfolk tokens. And then Soulstone Sanctuary can turn into a merfolk creature with vigilance, so you can also maybe attack with it, and then still before blockers tap it for mana, maybe enabling the Trapper to tap even more creatures down. So as you can see, the Trapper is often the centerpiece of a lot of these tapping synergies, so cannot be underestimated. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a solid hand. Trapper into Pilgrimage. Duelist to pump the team. So there's potential here. Well, let's see what our opponent's up to. Green-white, maybe Kithkin. Yeah, I'll go for the Pilgrimage, because now I can also maybe activate the Trapper, which still counts as tapping a merfolk to enable Pilgrimage. So it's just gonna keep getting out of hand. Never mind, opponent's just ramping with a Badger Mole. A land is useful. So I could use Drowner to tap down the Prairie to deny the opponent's 2 mana if I tap it in their upkeep. Trapper can also tap the Cub for what it's worth. Yeah, if I do both, I guess I get to make a bunch more tokens. So I'm down. So no attacks. Upkeep Drowner. Opponent can float 2 mana, but it's gonna go away once they move to their main phase. Opponent did actually have something here that they get to flash in. And Reese can remove the counters from the Prairie, and they can choose which ones. Alright. Let's see what else happens here. Badger Mole has Persist, so it's gonna come back if we try and remove it. But I can still activate Trapper on Reese. Collector's Cage makes sense, so that's the big payoff. So an interesting interaction too here with Trapper and Pilgrimage is that we get 2 separate tokens. Because there's 2 separate instances of tapping my Merfolk. Because normally you would only get 1 token if you tap 2 things at once. But they're kind of staggered here. Okay, and then Champion's not bad. Do I have lethal if I just play a couple Duelists? This would be 4, 5, 6, 7 plus 10. Yeah, that's just lethal. Wow. Otherwise I was gonna maybe look into using Drowner to get rid of the prairie. But yeah, may as well just attack for lethal. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand seems functional. One drop into Mentor, make a token. Navigator also plays well with Convoke on Disruptor, as we can maybe untap our creatures and then still Convoke afterwards. Opponent on some sort of tokeny deck. Maybe trying to play the 6 mana instant to make a bunch of copies. I've seen that one before. Gotta hope they don't have any board wipes. Because yeah, Merfolk can be soft to sweepers, of course. Don't have any main deck counter spells. Opponent making another clue, drawing a card. Yeah. Opponent could have a Day of Judgment next turn, which would hurt. And what's my play here? Could just activate this for a +1 counter and a card. I think I want to put more things into play first. Did not have the second white to play Trapper and Navigator, but I can still attack. Navigator untaps the team, and then I can still Convoke Disruptor. So yeah, that seems like the play. Get to pump the team. And then I don't have to necessarily Convoke this yet. Can wait and see what our opponent does. Hopefully it's not casting a sweeper. Split up. Destroying all untapped creatures. This is hilarious. So we'll bounce your clue. Happy with them losing a life. And we only lose the Convoke creature. Well, that's pretty sweet. And an attack is lethal. Yeah, split up versus Day of Judgment made all the difference there. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Opponent a black-green. This kind of fixes my lands not making all colors or entering tapped. So we can start there. Okay, for now, play Mentor. Although the plan might be Pilgrimage next turn. If they take out the Mentor, then Pilgrimage doesn't look as good, since it doesn't trigger off tokens becoming tapped. So don't have the best sequence set up for next turn. Mindspring helps a little bit. So now it's maybe a bit more appealing to double spell. Sure. So I can go ahead and attack. Again, Pilgrimage would not have triggered. This might get removed. So then we're still not enabling the Pilgrimage, sadly. Now Dissident I can tap down at least. That'll draw me a card. And the Trapper could be excellent if we can get it going. Don't necessarily want to copy the legendary creature, and our opponent's not going to give us the option. Okay. The fact that they're playing Maelstrom Pulse is a little concerning, because they could take care of multiple duelists if I try and copy them here. So I'm probably better off playing Duelist and Trapper and holding the command for another turn. Even though I potentially miss out on the opportunity to copy the Duelist. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I see. So that's gonna give me a -1 counter. They won't be able to proliferate it just yet. Guess I'll put it on the token. And another charade isn't bad. Trapper can still trap. But our opponent can of course also use their dissident in response. But yeah, if I wanted to draw my card, I had to target that one. And yeah, the Navigator's not bad. So I could attack and then still flash this in. As opposed to using the Trapper to make a bunch of tokens, which is also solid. If I attack, I get 1 token. If I tap, I get 2 tokens. So maybe I do actually wait on Navigator. Just send Duelist, which will make a token. Opponent's gonna surveil a response. And then... doesn't matter whether the opponent's creatures are tapped or not. Suppose I could have even used the Trapper, untapped it, and then tapped it again. Yeah, that probably would have been better, assuming there's no board wipe here. Because then I would have triggered the Pilgrimage even more. Alright, opponent's gonna exile the Mindspring. That's fine. And the Loyalist we can now tap down. And we get to draw with Charade as well. -1 counter can go there. Alright, feels like we should be able to close in on lethal. If I attack all out and play Navigator, especially if I copy Duelist, I guess they could have another Hex in response. But yeah, if not, they seem pretty dead. I guess I could use Trapper just to make some more tokens. Flash in Navigator. And then use Trapper again. And then command, copy, draw card maybe, copy the Navigator. And attack. And then we get 2 additional power from double Navigator here. Alright, so I was able to showcase some pretty cool interactions. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Trapper on 1, maybe Pilgrimage on 2, and our opponent's on the Vivid deck. Alright, that's a spicy one. And they get to start with Leylines, so yeah, we could be in trouble, especially if they have a Bloom Tender. And Drowner can maybe tap down a Bloom Tender for a turn, so that's not a bad answer. And Trapper could also tap it down in their upkeep. And yeah, there's Bloom Tender. So unless they have some instants they can cast, we're still maybe okay. Still liking Drowner, and then Trapper makes 2 extra tokens with Pilgrimage. That seems worth it. So, you can just attack with the Hexproof token. And then in their upkeep, and Drowner the Bloom Tender. They can still make 5 mana response, but they can only really cast instants with it. And then we'll wait and see what else they deploy. Alright, Prodigy will take out one of my creatures. But not before we activate it. And make 2 more Hexproof Merfolk. And now we could pump up the team. Might have to use Drowner to get rid of Bloom Tender, although I might be able to just close out the game in the meantime. Can go Mentor plus Duelist. This is still going to stay tapped for a turn. Yeah, that seems good enough. This is one of those awkward parts where Drowner having Vigilance is a drawback, since it's not going to be tapped for Pilgrimage. But it can be an upside when you're setting up Convoke. Like if I still had our Convoke Merfolk for 5 mana, I could have flashed it in, maybe bounced a Leyline. Alright, Prodigy can take out the Duelist, so now we're far from lethal, and Bloom Tender could be an issue. Air Temple I cannot activate, even though it enters untapped. And this does not have haste. Could send the Sanctuary, however. And then, let's see, chump, take 6. Opponent falls to 2. Yeah, that's probably still my best play. And I do get a token this time. But yeah, opponent could stabilize if they have a nice Curve Topper to go with a Bloom Tender. Their opponent falls to 1 actually. So they have 8 mana at least. Nursery's fine. It's gonna make 1 Tree Folk, but we're going wide at this point. And I could also activate the Air Temple. Should have remembered to tap my land just to make a Merfolk in the opponent's end step, but that's alright. But there we go. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a solid hand. Trapper, maybe turn to Pilgrimage already. We'll see if they can put a blocker in the way. But yeah, just having the Trapper to go with a Pilgrimage can eventually make a huge board of tokens. Opponent on some sort of Sultai deck. Wistfulness will draw discard, so this could be a graveyard strategy. And yeah, we see the Bringer already in the graveyard. So this is not going to be a particularly good matchup, one has to guess. Since we don't have any real way to stop the combo, tapping things down is not going to help. So I guess we just go for Sig and draw a card, try and apply some pressure. Maybe draw some Lords for a quick win. Do I pay the mana to transform? I don't think I do. Awaken takes out Sig. So, do I Pilgrimage? Do I Mentor? None of these are appealing options. At least with Pilgrimage I'm not overextending into the Bringer. So if it's not lethal on the spot, at least we'll still have some resources to work with. And there's Kivero. That's the one they need in hand. And now Brute Spinner can get in the way. I guess Charade is fine. Tap it down, draw a card, attack for 3. Make another token. And now Duelist is pretty threatening, since if I can play Duelist and copy it with command, we could be attacking for a lot of damage. How much damage exactly? Would be 6 plus 8 is 14. But they might be able to reanimate their graveyards. Yep, so there goes my board. I do get Sig back at least. But our opponent also got a few things. Not gonna pay to transform. So, is there any way I can survive? Opponent's got a Harvester of Misery in hand too, which they can cast to maybe wipe my board. Unless I play Duelist and copy it, then my creatures are 3/3. So that's maybe still my best play. And then I can also stun one of the opponent's creatures. Tap down the huge flyer. Still scheduled to take 15, but at least it's not lethal. Make a 3/3 token. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So next turn, if I were to transform, gains protection from each color, so I could make another creature unblockable. So I could actually conceivably attack for 7. Although they could also use Harvester to just shrink my creature down, so then it's no longer lethal. I guess Sanctuary would be my biggest creature, but I'm not going to be able to animate Sanctuary and transform all in my upkeep. It's technically beginning of main phase. But yeah, I'm not going to get a chance to play a land first. So I think I'm still dead, but we'll see. The seat for the blue mode can bounce something. Bounce a Sig. Yeah, that should buy them enough time as well. Overlord attacks. Can get something else back. And there's another Deceit, which can make me discard. Blocking probably doesn't benefit me. Although I'm not sure what I can top deck to save me. I guess I can think of a few sequences. Charade into Floodpit's Drowner might do it, since I get to chain those together, tap 2 things down. Now Brute Spinner gives him an extra blocker. Well, there's Charade. Although, with the extra blocker, I don't know if it's quite going to be good enough. But I think it starts here. And then do I tap the 6/5 on the ground or the 4/4 in the air? I guess I'll tap down the Wistfulness, because I could draw another Lord and trade for the 4/4. Sadly, I did not. So if I attack all out, I only get 3 damage in, I lose a Lord. If I play Sig, I can maybe draw if I target the Merfolk token, and then I don't lose. Well, I guess I would chump that one with a Brute Spinner. Still seems worth it to get the unblockable creature in play. And then, yeah, I guess I'll target the token, attack all out. Make another token, get my 3 damage in. Well, let's see if we're still dead. I do have to chump if they attack all out. With a land for Harvester, I can still chump with Charade at least. But that would not leave me in a winning position. So we'll see. Take 6 down to 7. And they had the lands for Harvester. I only get to keep Charade, and I think this is the end of the line, unfortunately. Yeah, ended up being a lot closer than I thought it would be. But there's just too many flyers attacking me next turn. Animating Sanctuary doesn't do anything. Okay. Still had a couple outs here, actually, if we drew some more interaction. Like the Convoke Merfolk bouncing the larger flyer, maybe. No point in attacking. Opponent considering their options, but they're going to conclude that attacking with their flyers is probably the right call. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. We've got double Duelist, can copy it once again with 6 command. And if we need removal, there's Drowner, which we can also copy if needed. Opponent's black-red, so maybe goblins. Name Merfolk. Could still start with the Duelist, may get removed. Is there any goblin I want to tap down with a Drowner? I guess there could be. If they don't play anything, it will be kind of a waste. But usually want to wait on Duelist until we have more of a board presence. And if I wait on Sig, I can also immediately draw a card. It is goblins, they did have the 2-3, so this lined up pretty well. Okay, so this turn probably going for Sig, draw a card, see what we pick up. A 1-drop would have been perfect. But next turn we can either double Duelist or even Mentor plus Duelist. Howl Squad, I can at least block the 1-1. They'll still get to drain me with a Curse Crafter. And there's the 1-drop I needed last turn. So, what are my options? Tapping the Howl Squad is not really gonna solve the ability. So I think I'm gonna go Silver Guild plus Duelist, since that allows me to attack with both right now. And I'm building up my board to take advantage of the second Duelist. Opponent actually trades, that's nice. Okay, so with a land I might even be able to 6 commands, play Duelist to get a bunch more. Opponent gave up on a hasty Krenko by trading last turn, but they maybe didn't have a choice. Now I did lose the Drowner, so I can no longer copy it, but I can still stun Krenko with the command itself. Unless it lines up better to play Duelist anyway. But then I'm probably not presenting lethal just yet. Would be 14, so 1 short. I mean, putting them to 1 is still decent, but if I can prevent Krenko from activating, it's maybe still better. So then, yeah, it's still gonna be 6 command. Tap and stun, copy the Lord. And then attack. Fine to trade for Curse Crafter now. So our opponent's at 4, Krenko doesn't untap. And and we still have an unblockable Sig. But yeah, opponent's just too far behind. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand. Trapper into Mentor, can set up a Convoke early on. Could use a couple of our payoffs as we're up against a Vivid deck once again. Okay, so we know the drill. And we once again have Drowner and Trapper to maybe deal with a Bloom Tender. And this time I've got a Disruptor to bounce the Leyline as well, so that could be another key interaction. So I'll just keep it simple. Play Mentor, hit for 2. And there's a Bloom Tender. Alright, so what's the most damage I can do? If I go Drowner on Bloom Tender, I can still bounce the Leyline, and I can do that all at instant speed. So we tap the Bloom Tender in the upkeep. That seems pretty good. Hoping there's no instance that can punish me. Have to do this before they go to their main phase, otherwise they could already play that Giant for 2 mana, for instance. Badger Mole. So next turn they can potentially recast the Leyline, although I can also tap the Verge. Although now with Bloom Tender that's probably not as likely to work out. Yeah, Badger Mole does make things a little trickier. Can still attack with everyone, and then I'll maybe be able to still use a Trapper. I guess the token's not getting busy. I guess I should have left the Trapper untapped if I wanted to tap anything, like the land. Alright, I guess that's fine. I'll just activate Sanctuary, or I can use Drowner to get rid of Bloom Tender. I think I need the pressure. I'm just hoping to top deck a Lord here to pump up the team, since I don't have anything else going on. So our opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana at the moment, since Bloom Tender only has green permanents. But they can go Leyline and then Bloom Tender's active. So now they still have 6 mana. Not enough for the 7-drop at least. And Weaver. And Tam, so yeah, a lot of mana elves here. 1 card left, so they may not have a huge payoff for Vivid. Although I also cannot seem to draw anything useful. I mean, my attacks are all still trading, so I can send the team and see what happens. If I send in the 1/1, does that matter? Because the 3/3s they can double block trade, take 7, 8. Versus if I attack with a 1/1, they maybe go trade, E to 1/1, take 8 down to 1. Yeah, let's go for it. Alright. Opponent going for the double chump, E to 1/1 instead. And now it's time for the big finish. Nature's Rhythm for 7. So that's getting the Vivid Giant. Yep. Alright, digging 5 cards deep. Let's see how dead we are. They can still harmonize this as well. So their opponent's down to 1. But they can keep going. Alright, there's the Awakener. And they hit a couple mana elves, which are good enough to block here. So I should be dead. Another Weaver. Awakeners can attack and put me dead next turn. I guess a Trapper can trap. Yeah, opponent still has plenty of blockers back. I don't think I should wait for them to attack with the Awakener. Opponent does not attack. That's a redraw. Although all the opponent's creatures are mana creatures except for Badgermole, which I guess is my target then. So I at least get to draw a card. Pilgrimage does help me go wide. So you're saying there's a chance. So they currently have 9 blockers to my 8 attackers. I would force them to trade, actually. So this might be a worthwhile endeavor. The 1/1 I could keep. Or I could attack like so, and then still use a Trapper. I guess I'll keep the 1/1 back. And then tap, let's say, a Forest. So we're getting 3 Pilgrimage triggers. One from normal creature becoming tapped, one more from Trapper, and then one from Drowner becoming tapped from the Trapper. I guess the Sanctuary and the Trapper happened at the same time, so that didn't give me an extra one. So I'm forcing the opponent to make a bunch of trades. Might have been worthwhile to tap the Weaver instead of a Forest, maybe, since that allowed them to double block a 3/3. Time is fine. They're not in a position to attack with Awakener. And our opponent explodes. Wow, what a game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Turn 1, start with a Trapper. Probably mentor into Duelist. So we get to pump a whole bunch of creatures at once. Opponent black-green. Name Merfolk. And hit for 2. So we could already convoke Disruptor if needed. Against a Voice of Victory. That is an option, although playing Duelist still lets me get a pretty good attack in. So I think I can wait. For now, go Duelist. And these can attack for 6. I also get to untap something. End of turn. So I could technically just attack for 3 and then convoke, bouncing the Voice in my end step. Yeah, I guess that's also reasonable. Sets them back on tempo a bit. Make sure to set a stop here, because I wouldn't be able to do this in the opponent's turn because of the voice's ability. Well, we're very far ahead on board. Can tap things down with a trapper if needed. Seamrip can answer the duelist, so bit of a setback. And now a turtle duck ×2. So our opponent may be playing a high toughness strategy. Well, I can just play another Mind Spring, activate this for 1, pump the team draw card, and smash. Opponent takes 6. Do they have Doran? Bedrock Tortoise does something very similar. Let's see, if I go Drowner and activate Trapper, tapping the Mind Spring, they would have 1 blocker left and still take 7, so I believe that's lethal. Tapping the Mind Spring, that can still exhaust since that one's more valuable. This should be Xaxes. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. We'll need to draw a couple more lanes maybe. Although it helps that we can convoke the Disruptor as well. Turn 1 Trapper. Turn 2 probably Mentor before Duelist. And turn 2 Bloom Tender, that one's quite scary. Did find the Pilgrimage, that's a good pickup. So if I go for Pilgrimage, wouldn't be able to do anything else this turn. Versus Duelists gets a bunch more damage in. Yeah, it's a close call. Maybe I do want to get the Pilgrimage going sooner rather than later. But I feel like I'm missing out on too much damage doing it. So we'll get in for 8s. And then especially with a land, if I can play Pilgrimage and still maybe activate Trapper, we get to make a bunch of tokens. Formidable Speaker. Discarding a random encounter, I see. So that's what we're doing. So probably playing the ley line as well, they just didn't draw it. Okay, so now opponent's at 10. I guess if I can deal with a speaker, I can attack for lethal. But I cannot do that and attack for 10. So instead play Pilgrimage. Trapper, tap speaker. Making sure to tap the actual creature so we get an extra token. And then once again. Sadly didn't have an extra mana to do it a second time. But now our opponent's at 5, so they need some sort of board wipe. Bloom Tender now taps for 2, so they can untap it with Speaker to be up 1 additional mana. Another Bloom Tender, I don't think that's gonna save them. Especially with 6 command. So can stun Tame. And make another Lord. Copy this one. Stun that one, although I guess I could also target the Bloom Tender. Does not have hexproof from blue and white. Attack all out. And that's game. So yeah, we got to see this blue-white Merfolk deck in action, and it does not mess around, can curve out and present a lot of power and toughness very quickly. The deck also has a decent amount of creature interaction with all the ways we have of tapping opposing creatures down and stunning them. The deck can be a little weaker to kind of go wide strategies, where they don't have one large thing for us to tap down, but maybe lots of smaller things, and then if we maybe don't draw the lords to pump up our creatures, we can struggle to get past them. But overall, I found this deck to be quite powerful. If you're worried about sweeper effects, of course we are playing blue, so we can always add a few counter spells, maybe out of the sideboard if we're playing best of 3. But for now, I like keeping the main deck as lean and mean as possible with lots of threats. The more creatures we have, the better the Convoke synergies and all the lords are too, so we don't want to play too many counter spells necessarily, but you could always make room for a couple and maybe shave some of the more expensive cards, especially if control decks become popular. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.